Welcome to Scene Change, a podcast by the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. All about equality, opportunity, accessibility, and the arts. Here, you'll learn adaptive techniques from performers in the know. We are changing what it means to be blind, one stage at a time. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scene Change. I'm Lizzie Muhammad Park, the Vice President of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division, and your host of the show. Today's episode is very special for two reasons. First, I'm co-hosting with our excellent producer, Shane Lowe, and this never happens. Hey, Shane.
It never happens. Hey, how's it going? That's part of our contract. She has to say nice things about me whenever she talks about me on the podcast.
We don't have a contract. Anyway, he will be asking all of the technical questions today that, would take me years to research. Clearly, he has done that research as our producer, and he knows all about it. So he will be an awesome help to the show. And of course, we've got a special guest for you, just as we do every month. Joining us today is John Dowling Jr. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, listeners, you've probably heard, some of his music, for example, at our 2021 NFB Showcase of Talent last summer at convention. He did a performance and it was outstanding. You may even follow him on Twitter, and he will give his Twitter handle, I'm sure, at the end of the show. You guys will all see why I'm laughing. And if you haven't seen either of those, then you really need to get on his YouTube channel, where you will hear some fabulous covers of country songs, and also quite a few self-written songs, if I'm correct. And in addition to that, he is a multi-instrumentalist. So we will get into all this and more. First, let's start off with some background. John, could you tell us where your journey with music began?
Sure. So it really started when I was about 4 or 5. And I think it was on my 5th birthday, I got a toy Yamaha keyboard. It wasn't the best. The music, the instruments kind of sounded like shit on it, but it was hard. It was good for a starter keyboard. It just kind of took off from there. I just kind of picked up different melodies from the songs that I would hear on the radio, and I'd be able to, put them down. And by 6, 7 years old, I was starting to, get a little better. And I had some people helping me. I had a neighbor who lived next door to me who, he saw the potential in me, the musical potential. And he kind of started pushing me to pick up different instruments. And I, by the time I was 8 years old, I was playing the piano, the harmonica, and I was also starting on the ukulele as well. And that's really kind of what got me into it. And then by the time I was about, 14, 15, I kind of picked up the guitar a little bit. I wasn't really playing too much. That really started in like 2018, 2019 was really when I really got serious about it. And
Wow. So you've mentioned harmonica, the piano, the guitar.
Yeah.
Do you play anything else? You're a vocalist.
Yeah. Let's see. I play the banjo. I play the mandolin. I play the drums somewhat. I play key drums, but I can also play real drums to an extent. But I'm better at key drumming.
That's a lot right there.
Yeah. I'm sure I've forgotten
drums
some.
or instruments you don't play would probably
yeah.
A good start.
Let's see. I don't play I still want to learn how to play the didgeridoo. That'd be a fun instrument to play.
That'd be great for country music. I'm all in for that. And we'll talk about that keyboard setup later on in the show.
Yeah.
As well, especially how we're getting those drum patches through. Why
Yeah,
so
man.
many instruments? A lot of people I know as musicians, and I'm one of them, we just kind
Yeah.
of lock into one thing that we do the
Yeah.
best. So for me, it's percussion. I lock in. I'm like, okay, I want to rehearse percussion, and I learn all kinds of
Yeah.
different percussion stuff. But
Yeah.
you're learning everything. You're focusing
Yeah.
on everything.
Yeah.
Why? It's amazing.
Thank you. I really don't know. I guess because the genre of music that I'm catering to, I feel is kind of dying in some respects. So I'm trying to keep it alive as best I can. And I feel the only way to do that is to master every single instrument in the genre.
Yeah,
No,
Mm.
I
it's a
don't know.
really
I mean,
authentic genre. So it makes sense.
yeah. Thank you, man. I guess it's also just for the fun and the challenge of learning a new instrument, seeing how many instruments I can play.
So tell our listeners, the ones who haven't yet heard of you and will be stalking you all over social media, what is your genre?
I
How would
play
you define
tradition.
it?
Yeah, so I play what is called traditional country music. And the reason it's called traditional country music is because it kind of relies heavily on a lot of the traditional instruments that kind of made country music. Like the guitar and the fiddle and the pedal steel and the drums. Um, I feel like a lot of today's country music, and I'm not trying to bash it, but I feel like today's country and really just music in general is a lot. It's very produced. It's very kind of organically made. I feel like there's not a lot of human feeling. Um, that everyone just kind of goes to a studio, they lay stuff down, they quantize it, they put all these auto tuning and all the stuff on their vocals, and yeah, that's all good and all, but I don't know, I miss the real human authenticity of the way that country music used to be, and it still is to a certain degree.
Hmm. I definitely saw that on your Twitter and so on. I could tell that you're a very independent thinker.
Yeah,
And then
thank you.
when you look at the YouTube, and you're, just going through all the different songs and, the covers, the self-written songs that they are, I can tell your voice, it has very versatile capabilities. And I was just wondering, so did you pick up, you mentioned some of your instruments and things like that. Did you pick up these different vocal styles,
Oh
instruments,
yeah.
etc.? Are you self-taught? Are you
Yes.
just listening to the stuff or,
Yes. Yep.
wow,
Oh yeah. Yep.
what's that
Yeah.
process like?
That's a good, I never really thought about it. I guess it's just, because I kind of have everything set on automatic now. It just kind of, zoom, it just happens. Yeah. So I think what I tend to do is when I'm first starting to really learn a song, I really kind of study it in and out. So like I will just constantly listen to it and I will analyze how the singer is singing and how the way he's moving his mouth. I can kind of visualize it in my head. Like for example, kind of the way that Waylon Jennings sings. He has a kind of a different tonal quality as say someone like Willie Nelson who he kind of sings through his nose, and uh, but it's so yeah, it's just just little nitpicky things like that I guess not a lot of people would really understand or pick out.
I think that sets out the talent, though. It's the people that really put in that dedication to study the craft, to study the
Yeah.
pioneers of the craft, but also the
Hmm.
craft itself. You really focus in on those people who paved the way.
Yeah.
And that's where you get your influence, which
Yeah,
is really
man.
neat. So once you've got your tone down,
Yeah.
where do you go from there?
Well, I guess then it's really just about the lyrics and kind of going through them and making sure that I know all the words that I'm supposed to sing. And then even if it's a song that I'm really intrigued by, I'll kind of look up the history of it and look up I'll kind of try to get into the writer, whoever wrote the song's head, and see what he or she was thinking about when writing that song. And I feel like it kind of gives a deeper meaning to why I went to learn it.
So you're a
Yep.
natural, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You're a
And
natural,
Yeah.
what
kid.
so what about learning a new instrument then? Because that's going to be a different process than the
Yeah.
vocals.
Right. So with that aspect, it I feel like it's kind of the same way, except I'm not, it's kind of like with the vocals, except I'm kind of learning how the instrument works, how you make the sounds, and and then I'll just kind of listen to the song over and over and see what kind of articulations they used, how they got it to sound, the way that they did. And I don't try to copy it, melody for melody, but I try to get it as close as I can to the original, just so that way that little piece of history is still preserved.
Mm. Now, okay, for example, tell us how you learned to play the mandolin. I don't even, what is it? What does it look like? How did you, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Sure. Actually, let me see if I can get it. But essentially the mandolin, it kind of looks like a violin. It's small. And it's got 4 sets of 2 strings. And they're both tuned at the same octave. And they're actually tuned the way that a violin is tuned. So you got G, D, A, and E. And it was primarily used in bluegrass. But it has been used in a lot of traditional and some pop country songs as well. But its main fame and fortune is bluegrass. One of the things that makes it kind of special to me, and the reason why I love the mandolin so much, is because the guy that invented bluegrass, Bill Monroe, was an excellent mandolin player, and he could play. I mean, I don't think I'm as good as he is, but he can play some, man. He's really good. And he required that all of his players be as good as he is, and I think that's a great requirement to have, and I would probably do the same thing if I had a band like that. But I'm also a perfectionist, so that I'm sure that and I think Bill Monroe was also a perfectionist too. So that it's not always a good thing, because you think you could do better when in reality it's fine, but in your head you're like, no, this needs to be tweaked, even though it really doesn't. But that's just what happens.
True.
How do you cope with that?
Life of a perfectionist. Yeah,
I struggle with that a lot as a performer.
Yeah. I don't. I guess I just it never stops.
So same answer as me then. Excellent.
Yep.
We've learned a lot from this podcast. Can you give us a sample of the mandolin?
I was gonna ask that same question.
Yeah,
I don't know what it sounds like.
Let me see. All right, let's just make up something.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's about as good as we're gonna get with this thing. I need to get it restrung and take it to Guitar Center, because it's
right
not
on.
doing
Thank you,
too
man.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
Is there a bow?
No.
Oh,
nope,
sorry.
No.
Yeah, I should mention, you don't hold it on your shoulder. Like, you don't play it like a violin.
You don't play it like a violin. And that's actually another good point that I was going to bring up as my playing techniques. I play guitar and other instruments a little differently than most people. I play guitar with it kind of flat facing up on my lap, so I don't hold it the way that a regular guitar. Yeah, I kind of play it like Jeff Healey.
Oh yeah, he's amazing blues guitarist.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yes, and thank you for educating our listeners on what the mandolin is, and a demo of how it sounds. Yeah, this is what we need. This is what the show is all about. So, okay, so you were telling us that you are self-taught with all of your vocals and instruments.
Yep.
So, okay, let's say there's an instrument like the banjo, now that we talked about the mandolin.
Yep.
And you want to learn to play it.
Yeah.
As a blind guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you just pick it up and you just start strumming away and listening to songs and trying to match? Or do you at least ask someone for like a first lesson to orient you to the instrument? Or what is it? Is it YouTube? How do you do this?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of glad you asked. There's a guy that I would totally recommend. You can find him on Bard, and his name is Bill Brown, and he's got some great courses on the guitar, on the mandolin, and I think I believe he has one on the banjo too. But that's actually how I learned how to play a little bit of the mandolin from from reading his books. I read his book, Intro to the Mandolin, and I learned how to play a couple of chords. And from there, I kind of took it from there, you know. So as long as you kind of know how to play, like, so one thing that I've kind of noticed as I've been picking up these instruments is once you can play one, you can kind of play them all. You know, as long as you kind of know the principles. Like for the banjo, and actually I can show you this, you know, a little later. I have a 4-string banjo, which isn't very common, you know, because a lot of people are used to seeing 5-string banjos. But a 4-string banjo, which is called a tenor banjo, that was mainly used for jazz, and it was also used in some country songs back in the 40s. But the way that I have it tuned is it's actually pretty much the same tuning as a guitar. So it's D, G, B, and E. And since I know how to play guitar, I can pretty much play the banjo pretty well because it's basically the same chord shapes. But yeah, so I guess really what I'm trying to say is I kind of, you know, I get someone to kind of give me a little push, and then I can kind of take it from there.
It's a really good resource too. For those of you who don't know, BARD is the Library of Congress.
Yep.
Essentially, their answer to making books available to those who are blind and print disabled. So it's a really good resource. I've seen those books on BARD, but I always wondered, I'm like, are these actually useful? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they are. They
so
are,
it's
man.
good to know that they are. So good to know. Now, you've defined your style of music as essentially bringing back old country, right? Like bringing it back and modernizing it so that people can know that there's more to country music than just pop country sort of where it's going these days, right?
Yeah.
And you wrote a song, and it was really good.
Thank you.
Especially as my dog, you don't even know which one I'm talking about yet.
The one
especially
song.
Exactly. Especially as my dog gets older. I believe it's called "Do Dogs Go to Heaven?"
Yep.
And it's such a good song because my girl is now 10 and she's my first dog, and I'm always thinking about that. I'm like, she's a lab, so
yeah,
I'm like, she's only got like 4 more years left, and it's just so sad to think about. I'm always just hugging her. So of course I want to get into the story of how did you write that song. I'm sure it well, first of all, is it a true story? I was gonna say I'm sure it's a true story, but wait a minute, what if it's not?
It is. It's
okay,
a true story.
Yeah, because there's so much feeling in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that you mentioned earlier about the old style of country. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
So go ahead, take it away.
Sure. So the story is about my dog. He was a Lhasa Pekingese, and so he was a small guy. And let's see, when I was about 15 years old. So I had 2 dogs back then. I had him, and I had a Beagle Boxer mix. And the Boxer, so he was kind of chilling underneath because we bought a couch from IKEA, and he was just kind of chilling under there. And the Beagle Boxer jumped up on the couch, and I don't think he realized that he was underneath the couch, and he kind of jumped up on there, and we think it kind of severed his spine or something because it messed up his back legs. And so we had to take him down to the SPCA, and they put him down, unfortunately.
So then in writing this song, and you did mention that it happened when you were about 15 in the song. Yeah. In writing this song, there is that feeling, there's that, emotion. What was that process like? And did it help you? Was it therapeutic? Just
I don't know. I think it kind of was in a way, although when I wrote it, this was about, let me see, about 4 years later. But I mean, even still, I guess you could say it was therapeutic. Yeah.
But the songwriting process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do? Do you just pick up an instrument and you start with the melodies? Do you just start with some words and then
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what I did was I kind of sat in front of my piano and I started playing chords, and it just kind of came to me. And after so what usually when I write songs is and I should say songs when I wrote that one song, really what I do when I write songs is I kind of start off with the melody first, and I'll kind of work at the arrangement before I actually write the lyrics. I guess just because so that way I have something to kind of go on as I'm writing, the lyrics down. But yeah, so I had the song arranged first, and then I just sat down and I wrote it.
Now, someone like you who plays all these different instruments, right?
Yeah.
You sit down at the piano and you start with the melody. And then do you pick up your mandolin, and then you pick up the banjo, and then you pick up you know what I mean?
Yeah. See, I guess it all depends on the song that I'm writing. Like for that, I really relied heavily on the piano for that, and then I kind of picked up my instruments, after so I didn't really think about what instrument I was picking up first. I just kind of grabbed the nearest one that was closest to me.
Do you grab the nearest one, or do you think of one that, like, is there one in your head and then you grab it?
I think that's about it. I think I kind of hear it in my head, and I'm like, all right, I want it to sound like this. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Well, I've never written a song before, but that's how I would imagine, which is why I'm asking all these questions, That's how I would imagine, like you sort of hear something and then you go and create it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe, does it change after maybe you've heard something, in your head, you do something, you hear the banjo piece in your head, you play that. And then what? Does another piece just kind of come to you, and then you start playing that instrument too? Like I want to know all of this from a multi-instrumentalist perspective.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really know how to explain. I guess what happens is I'll hear the instruments in my head kind of one by one, and I'll lay that first instrument down, and then I'll drop. Well, I won't physically drop it, but I'll put it down, and I'll pick up the next one that I hear in my head, and I'll just kind of keep going from there until I have all of it recorded. Yeah.
And you play all of your own instruments for your songs?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I think that's so cool.
Thank you.
Well, let's hear a sample of Do Dogs Go to Heaven?
All right. I was 15 years old when my dog passed away. I would sit in my room and start to pray. I would ask God these questions, so strong and so true. Like, do dogs go to heaven like we humans do? Do dogs go to heaven like we humans do? Do they need special treatment and love that's so true? What about stray dogs who don't have a home? Will dogs go to heaven? Will I see my own? Yes, Lord, do dogs go to heaven? And will I see my own?
That was amazing, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man.
That was so good. I love that Rhodes. I love the sound of that Rhodes piano.
Hell yeah, dude.
It sounds excellent.
Yeah, dude. Nothing beats the sound of a Rhodes, man. Man, I would love to own one of those things. That would be so cool.
Oh, like an actual authentic one.
Yeah,
those
dude.
are incredible.
Oh my God.
Those must be so expensive. An original. How so?
For sure.
For listeners who don't know, talk
Yeah.
about the Rhodes piano sound. How is that created? What? Because you could tell that it sounds different, from your traditional piano.
Yeah.
Keyboard.
Well, so the way that I've heard is that uh, the Fender Rhodes is like a standard kind of piano, except it's got these little mallets with these. I don't know if they're like strings, but all of that's connected to an amplifier, and that's why it's called an electric piano, because the amp is what helps kind of make the sound. But
Shapes
I know
that
that
tone a little bit.
yeah, and I know that different electric pianos have different like mallets and stuff that are inside them that strikes the strings to make them have different tones, like the Wurlitzers and that's why the Wurlitzers sound different than the Fenders. And I think that's also I think they might also use different string types too,
Yeah,
probably.
absolutely. And that's something that always stood out to me, which is why I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, dude.
In your sound, because you play a lot of your instruments live in the room.
Yeah.
A lot of the guitars, a lot of the string instruments,
Yep.
especially.
Yeah.
Um, but what you fill in, the rest you fill in with these great sounding patches
Yeah.
in your keyboards. So I want to talk about that and kind of
Sure.
strip it back to the basics a little bit for people
Yeah.
who are listening to your music and your
Right.
productions and who want to get a similar sound that's really authentic, these high quality sounds that are all coming
Yeah.
through a keyboard.
Yep.
So talk me through your technical setup. How are you? What keyboard
Sure.
are you using? What's your
Yeah.
signal chain?
Yep.
Going into the computer, um, and we'll go from there.
Cool. All right. Well, I just want to give a disclaimer. This is about to get very technical and very geeky. So
Yeah, this is
just
the
be
nerd portion of the show. This is why I've never been a co-host before. I'm going to break it down.
It's exactly what Shane's here for. Because I was about to be very
This
lost.
is the good
And
part,
I'll stop
people.
you. I'll stop you if I need more clarification. I speak for the people who don't know.
yeah,
Please do.
sure. So all right. So this is what my rig looks like. It's a 2019 iMac with a 16 gigs of RAM, an Intel Core i3, which I didn't even think that they made i3 processors. I thought there was just a 5 and a 7 and a 9. But
So it's a
I apparently
relatively new computer, but with
yeah,
actually, I mean, the RAM is a decent size, but it's
yeah,
actually a relatively old processor. So this
yeah. Uh-huh.
so so to translate, this setup doesn't actually require as much computer power as I expected,
Yeah,
which is
no,
really cool.
no. Yeah. Well, so I have a 1 terabyte internal hard drive. It's a combination of a SSD and a spinning drive. That Apple calls it their Fusion drive. But then I also have a 1 terabyte external SSD, which holds all my sounds. Because you really don't want to put all those sounds on a spinning drive because it'll take too long to load, and then with all that,
Yeah,
all the
to break it
spinning
down,
and
the SSD is a solid state drive, and
yep,
most older computers have hard disk drives, and
yep,
the hard disk drives they spin. They're called platters inside of your hard drive that spin, and
yep,
that's from there is where the data is retrieved from the spinning drives. But they're a lot slower than your solid state drives, where everything is pulled without moving parts. That's why they're solid state
yep.
drives. So you want
Hmm.
to, anytime you're working in music production,
You want to have an
or
SSD.
especially something like this when you're playing instruments through a keyboard into a computer,
Yep.
you want the absolute minimum delay possible so that you can play on time. You can play
Hmm.
in time.
Yeah. And let's see. I'm using a Native Instruments Complete Control S61 Mark II that I got back in 2018, and they're about, I'd say maybe $700, but it is well worth it, man. I have not regretted, spending, the money that I did on this, and I just hit the keys by accident.
So that's a MIDI keyboard only.
Yep. Yeah, it's a MIDI keyboard only.
Cool.
There's no sound stored on this thing. Everything has to be pulled through the
Cool.
computer,
Talk to me
which is
about how
kind of a
MIDI
downside.
works and where you get your sounds and how all of
Sure.
that works.
So MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, And the way that it works is um, it works inside of a DAW, which is digital audio workstation, and I use Logic. And what you do is you can plug in a keyboard, or I know some people have um, like you can actually get like little guitars that use MIDI. But essentially, what you do is you plug in an instrument to your computer, and through the instrument, when you push a key, it'll send a signal to your computer that says, "All right, you push this button, so now you got to trigger this sound." And or in some cases, it doesn't trigger a sound; it actually triggers an expression, such as hearing the sound of someone moving their finger up and down the fretboard of a guitar, um, which I can demonstrate later if need be. But um, this the way that I get my sounds is I use um because the way that Native Instruments works is they have this thing called Contact, which is their sample library, kind of like I guess you could say it's like their format of how they put their instruments together and how they make these sample libraries. And then there are third party companies that partner up with Native Instruments, and they make libraries of their own of different instruments. Like I have a sample library of an old panacord, which is sort of like a what are those instruments called? It's kind of like a vintage cue chord, like before the. And what a cue chord is it's kind of like a digital musical instrument that has a strumming plate on it, and it has different buttons around that strumming plate, and you hold down the button and you strum the strumming plate, and it'll cause different samples inside the machine to go off, and you get different sounds and stuff. So it's really cool. But I mean, you like basically any instrument that you can think of is probably in this keyboard. And some of them are a bit pricey because you have to pay for some of these contact libraries, but they're about $100 a piece. I think the most expensive I paid for a library is about $400, and that was that was part of the Rhodes. It's where you heard the Rhodes from. That came from that $400 library, and it's a great one. It's called Keyscape, and it's made by a company called Spectrasonics. And it's got a wide array of keyboards and electric pianos, and um, you know little toy pianos, and just little quirky things like that. But it's really amazing how far our technology has come from even just 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's
It's
amazing.
really cool. So
Yeah, dude.
where do you find all of these libraries? Where do you locate the libraries that you want to play, and how do you pick which ones you want to buy? Because you can't just buy all of them because they're really expensive. So
Right.
how do you pick
Yeah.
which sounds you like?
Yeah. So what I do is I'm a part of a list called so there's a website called kk-access.com, and it's ran by a guy named Chris Enkin, I think it's his last name. And he's a British guy from somewhere in the UK. And the website was intended, or I should say, is intended for blind people who use native instruments, who are interested in looking at different uh, sample libraries. And what he basically did was he took all these different sample libraries from around the web, and he kind of compiled them into one list. And he made some reviews of different libraries so that we can kind of get a feel of what you're dealing with before you purchase them. And then even on the company's websites, you can find audio demos so that way you kind of know what you're getting before you buy them. But really, it's all about kind of just Googling around and seeing what's out there. You can also look at YouTube for that as well. And there's a guy is a pretty famous and cool musician in his own right. His name is Andre Louise from the UK as well. He's blind, and
Yeah.
he does a lot of those reviews as well on his YouTube channel. And you guys should definitely check him out if you're into to piano music and stuff like that. And he's done reviews on some of the instruments that I own. I unfortunately do not own all of the awesome libraries that he does, but I'm getting there.
Bringing up your collection.
Yep.
I love it.
Oh yeah.
So that's kk-access.com where you can check out all of those libraries and reviews. That's really neat. I didn't know there was an accessibility resource for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
I love it. So once you pick your libraries, how do
Yep.
you get the library to interface with your DAW, in this case Logic,
Yeah.
and the Native Instruments keyboard?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So, depending on the library, you there are two ways of doing this. If your library does not have a registration code like a serial number, then you don't have to launch Native Access, which is the tool that Native Instruments used to uh, kind of manage your libraries. But so if it doesn't have this serial code where you would have to launch Native Access, you can just paste it into the folder containing all of your libraries. And in this case, since I'm like to be very organized, I like to make separate folders for the third party contact instruments which aren't directly sold by Native Instruments. So for example, like the Keyscape library, that's a third party contact library. And so what I'll do is I'll put that, because really essentially all the sample libraries they're just folders with files in them. So you get the folder, you unzip them, and then you copy the folder and you put it into your third party contact libraries folder. In this case, I put it on my 1 terabyte SSD. And then I will launch the standalone application called Complete Control, which on the Mac is in the applications folder, another folder called Native Instruments, but under Windows, it should just be on your desktop or in your start menu. And what you do is you'll launch it, and then it'll scan your folder. And if it doesn't do that automatically, then you're gonna have to go to the preferences and actually point your user directory at that folder, and then it'll start scanning. But then once the scanning is complete, then you can close the standalone application, open up your DAW, and then you just add Complete Control as an instrument. It'll show up under the Mac. It'll show up under as an audio unit. And then so you add that, and then this is where the fun part starts. On your computer or on your keyboard itself, the MIDI keyboard, there actually exists an accessibility feature built into the keyboard, so it talks to you. And that's how you're able to pick out the library, and you use the different knobs on the keyboard to kind of control where you are in the space. And
so that's done through the keyboard and not
Yep.
through Logic or Complete Control.
No, yeah. So all of the libraries itself, when you're picking like an instrument, is all done through the keyboard itself. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in this case, the specific keyboard is important because you want to make sure you have a MIDI keyboard, a Native Instruments MIDI keyboard
Yep.
with accessibility features.
Yeah.
So which one
Yep.
are you using again?
I'm using the Native Instruments Complete Control S61 Mark II, and that's about $700. But if you don't want to pay an arm and a leg for it, if you want to dip your toes into the accessibility pool, you can get the Complete Control M32 for about $120. You can also go for there are two different series of keyboards. There's the A series and the S series, and I have the S61, and the S series is kind of like the flagship, and the A series is kind of like the cheaper version. So I kind of like to think of the S61 as sort of like the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and the A series as like the regular 13, or
Yeah.
even the 13 mini, something like that.
Right on. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. So
Yeah.
with all of this technology that you have, with all of these libraries that you have,
Yep.
how do you decide when you want to use a MIDI instrument versus an instrument that you actually possess and play yourself?
Well, I think it just depends on the kind of mood I want, the kind of vibe I'm looking for. And if I'm really feeling like, I really want this to be as authentic as I can, then I will try to kind of cut back on the amount of virtual instruments that I use. So, for example, um, I may pick up my guitar and actually, you know, use it instead of using something like, I don't know, session guitar strummed acoustic, which is, it's a great sounding guitar for what it is, but it just doesn't have that authentic feel that I would be looking for. So a real six string would be great in that case. But in some cases, like where I don't have access to a real instrument, for example, I don't have access to a real pedal steel. I would love to get one. However, I do have one that sounds pretty realistic, enough that I could probably get away with it to the average listener. Now, for someone like Shane or some other musicians who know what to listen for, they could probably tell that it was fake. But I'm sure to your average music fan, they probably wouldn't be able to tell.
So
the
me.
Calling Lizzie out, except I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference between your pedal steel and an actual one. That's why I want to talk so much about your libraries and your native instruments, because they sound so realistic. They sound so authentic.
Yeah.
That a lot of them, I mean, it's really difficult with things like guitars or drums in certain cases to,
that's true.
As a drummer, you can always tell whether drums are synthetic or whether they're actual, you have the percussion in your hands. But it's with these, every instrument is like that. It's almost like you need a specialist in every instrument to be able to tell if it's not that instrument. Otherwise, like it just goes right by me. Like, wow, John, where'd you get a pedal steel, man? That's amazing.
Yeah, man, I was able to fit in my room, man, and that's a big instrument.
So Shane did tell me that you can also make some beyond, the instruments that you can download on the library. You're also able to make some pretty cool sounds on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what I meant on that was when you're playing the instruments, a guitar, for example, you actually hear, it doesn't sound like you're playing a guitar on a keyboard. It actually sounds like you're playing a guitar. And the way that's possible is you can hear, you hear the player's hand moving on the fretboard. You hear the strings sliding. There are these authentic acoustics behind it. So it's a really immersive sound. Can you give us a demo of a guitar?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. So
wow.
So what you're hearing is you get all of these different, you get emphasis on notes. The harder you press the key, the harder it strums the string in the sample. It slides. So when you go from one note up to another, it'll slide. If you could actually do that with your finger as a guitarist. So it does all of these immersive things. It's not just it hits the corresponding note when you play it. It's doing a lot of processing in the background to make it the immersion so much higher in the instrument.
There's also key switches. So if I hold down like the B flat key and I push a chord or I push a note, it'll actually kind of move up to that note. So for example, if I don't push that B flat and I push like an E, it does that. But if I hold down that B flat and push that E again, and then vice versa, if I hit that, because if I do a G sharp and then I hit that E again, it does that. And then there's also harmonics. Let's see. Yeah, so
Oh, that's cool. I never heard it do that before.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could simulate harmonics with that. That's crazy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's nuts.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's all good.
Wow,
Man.
that is really cool. Just all these different capabilities that you have, from this piano and this MIDI keyboard and your software.
Yeah.
So how long have you been using these it's not, what is it called? Is it this technology, I guess I could say?
Yeah. Well, I've been playing around with I like to call them either virtual instruments or sample libraries, and I've been playing around with these since about 2018. Just about.
Wow.
So only
And you're
4
already,
years on these.
yeah, right.
Yep.
And you're already,
I'm dropping out.
yeah, right. And I'm not even starting. So, I mean, this is really good. This is really good information. And thank you so much for joining us. Before we let you go, would you mind telling everyone your Twitter name? I'm sure they've been dying to hear this one.
Sure, yeah. And if you want, I can kind of give a backstory on.
Say it
please do.
Proud. Loud and proud.
Twitter name came about. But you guys can follow me on Twitter at Wank Williams Jr. That's WankWilliams Jr. And the name came about as sort of an inside joke between me and a couple of my pals on Venom.
Yeah,
but,
I was here for this, actually.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that. I don't even remember how it came about. I think. Yeah. Right. I don't know how it came about. I think we were just kind of just joking around, and I was like, "Oh, I should be Wank Williams Jr." And we were like, "You know what? That sticks." And then I think one of you guys were like, "Hey, you should set that as I think it might have been Jimmy. He was like, "Hey, you should set that as your Twitter name," because I feel like Jimmy would do something like that. So I was like, "You know what? Why not?" So I did. And,
as a little backstory. That's actually how John and I met. We worked together on a streaming platform called Venom.
Yep.
So if you're digging what you're hearing from John, you can check him out there. He does a show called The Honky Tonk Show every Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern, playing classic country and
that's right.
All the best in traditional country music.
That's right. Damn right.
Yeah, we have a great sense of humor. It's a group of friends. We have a good time, putting together professional content, but also influencing our friends to change their Twitter names that could potentially ruin their career.
Yes, and forgive me, everyone, for calling it. I was calling it old country. I want to change it to traditional country. I was like,
plays that old country.
That's right. Yeah, I play for the old folks.
Well, let's see. Also, where can they find you on YouTube?
They can find me on YouTube at John Dowling, Jr. That's also where you can find me on Spotify and Apple Music and other stuff. Dowling, by the way, is spelled Dowling. It's
Perfect.
Irish.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, man.
This will be perfect right before St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, there you go. That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your insight, man. This has been a blast. This has been a lot of fun. Lizzie, thanks for letting me crash your party.
Of course,
I've had
anytime.
great fun.
It's so natural. Would you guys believe Shane and I don't have to rehearse this? You know what I mean? It just comes off so naturally.
Yeah, dude,
it's
I
just
love
fun,
that.
And just thank you so much, John, for coming, and also to you too, Shane. And this is going to be an awesome episode. I hope everyone's enjoyed listening. Thank you to all the listeners, and to the entire podcast team. Scene change
Stay
out.
safe out there.
I'm Caitlin McIntyre, president of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Scene Change. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at nfb-pad.org. There you'll find links to our social media, membership, and resources for blind performers. Thanks to everyone who makes this show happen. Scene Change is produced by Shane Lowe, Joe Schuneman, Precious Perez, Chris Nussbaum, Seyun Choi, and Aaron Jordan, with music by Ryan Strunk and Tom Page. Remember, you can be the performer you want. Blindness is not what holds you back. We'll see you next time.